Many thanks, both of you, for that. I guess, given it's a sort of whole systems approach, there's an awful lot of threads to draw on with this research. So lots to talk about. We've got a couple of questions, or we've got a few questions coming in now. So I'll go through them. There's one here, someone asking, you saw sort of different sized climate effects for different farms. And do you have any ideas why you saw this? So, for example, due to farm geography or climate system, type of pig, and is there any way that we could exploit this to improve resilience? And I'm sorry, can I just introduce, we've also got another member of the team, Pippa Chapman, who's also available to answer questions. So hello, Pippa. And you're based at Leeds as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So shall I ask that question again? So do you have any ideas why you saw different sized climate effects for different farms?
Okay, so this is in relation to work package 1, and actually, Steve, I think you had a really lovely answer for this the other day when we were talking about what happens in Scotland and how you choose to position your farms for the various different breezes that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. It is back to the whole farm system. It's about having the right genetics in the right management system in the right location, and we as a business specifically target areas of the country that are on the right soil type, so it's free draining and it's dry, but actually we get the benefit of a cool onshore breeze during the daytime and an offshore breeze at night time that keeps the temperature much more constant for the pigs. So it's very specific to certain areas of the country that can deliver that, and that's a great benefit to the pig.
Okay, great. Anyone else like to add?
I think Steve basically covers it. I think it depends on so much on the microclimate factors that are at play in that area. And so even where, you know, one of the things that we noted was that even in Scotland, where the farms were actually located pretty closely together, actually we see quite substantial differences between the farms in terms of the climate impacts. Because of, we think, these additional factors relating to onshore breezes and off-land breezes as well that help to mediate those temperatures and other factors that we know play an impact on heat stress.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about welfare. So will climate change impact the welfare of animals substantially? And are there conflicts or synergies that could be exploited between adapting to climate change to improve production or to improve animal welfare?
That's a really good question. So my PhD originally was in animal welfare, so that's the background I come from. And you know, very much from a heat stress point of view, I think there is potential for welfare impacts with increasing temperatures in particular. So you know, we mentioned the research earlier that linked through to production parameters being affected, but actually there's a lot of research that's coming out of, for example, Australia, that shows other physiological impacts of much higher temperatures again. So I think when we're looking forward at the climate projections, you know, going, you know, 10, 20 years into the future, I think there is a potential, particularly in the south, where we could see much higher temperature increases. We could also see much higher heat stress in those locations, and we will need to put mitigating factors into and strategies into place to help protect them.
Could I just add there? I think there's risk and opportunities to the welfare impact on the animals, because one of the things that I took away from the presentation was the increase in temperature is affecting the low temperatures at least as much, if not more, than the high temperatures. So actually, by increasing the low temperatures, the pig may be closer to its thermal comfort zone more often, and it certainly reduces some of those practical issues of frozen water pipes in the winter time, which would obviously have a large negative impact on welfare. So there is potential to improve in the right areas, but there are significant risks if we're in the wrong area with the wrong management.
I think that's right. I think certainly, particularly in the north, I think we'd see some benefits in slightly warmer temperatures. And sitting in a very cold room here at the moment, I feel like I could benefit from some slightly warmer temperatures too. So,
I add something. It's also quite hard to quantify, but obviously these sort of extremes are important for pig welfare, and we saw that how it impacted the soil. So if you have very dry periods, the soil can become very hard, and that can have issues for pigs walking around. And then these periods can be followed by very wet periods very quickly after a very dry period. And so again, it's really important that these sites are outdoor pigs are on the right soil, and as Steve spoke about, you know, making sure the climate, we can mitigate against extremes in climate, but also the location and the impacts of climate change on soil type as well.
Great. And sort of keeping on talking about soils, I was interested in the fact that you're also measuring things like runoff. So what do you have much? What can you say about sort of infiltration and overland flow runoff into rivers and things? How serious a problem could that be?
Well, again, it does depend a little bit on the site. You know, Steve's spoken about this, about making sure you're on quite free draining soil. And just as our modelling work presented, it's important to try and include outdoor pigs within a rotational system that takes advantage of that increased nitrogen or phosphorus application. And that means that we don't have to apply so much inorganic fertilizer for the next crops. So we've already got the soil fertilized. And if we make sure that we do that and, you know, don't apply inorganic fertilizers, then the crop will benefit and we don't have to use that. So that's a good thing. Obviously, there is always the risk, and I think, again, particularly with these extreme events, very high rainfall events, then of course it's to try and encourage the soil to be covered with vegetation would be advantageous. I don't know if Steve wants to add anything.
Yeah, I would just, I think there's an opportunity. We know we saw the slide with the picture of the drone doing the field mapping. Many of our arable colleagues are doing a lot of precision farming and mapping fields in great detail. Actually sharing that knowledge and using it for both enterprises is a real value add to us. Most outdoor pig farms don't use the whole field. There's usually a margin around about to protect the livestock area from the surface drains. So is there an opportunity there to manage that differently? You're looking at the new agriculture bill, again, hedges and things, instead of cutting them once every 3 years, we can perhaps go to once every 5. And again, encourage biodiversity and environmental protection around the field margins. So there's lots of potential with the extra knowledge that we gain from this work about precision management.
Okay, great. There's a couple more questions coming in. So there's one, your results seem to show that mixed farming could be a good thing to incentivise as part of ELM. What do you think? If not, what do you think are the evidence gaps?
Well, I think certainly as far as our results go, it does seem that a mixed farming approach could be a good thing to investigate further. I think it's important to note that we haven't explored all the various different scenarios that we could at this stage. So we will be embarking on some work in this area over the coming few years. So hopefully as time progresses, I'm trying to be very careful here in what I say, we should be able to do far more in terms of, sort of the regenerative agriculture space and looking at what the impacts of this could be. So looking at lots of different scenarios, again, working with stakeholders right from the very outset to explore different types of approaches that might be of interest and different ideas for benefiting soil health in that longer term period. So I think livestock would certainly be part of some of those scenarios, but not necessarily all of them. So I think a mixed farming approach, from what we can see so far, there, you know, it can be beneficial. And I think, Steve, you were mentioning the other day about some farms that have recently started taking on one of the scenarios that showed our our best soil organic carbon approach, where you had very short durations of pigs on the fields followed by grass. And I think you were mentioning something along those lines.
Yeah, it was actually about reasonably long or normal durations of pigs, but at stocking densities on soil types that allow vegetation to remain in place. Again, we saw on some of the slides just a few minutes ago, areas of the field where there is vegetation that has persisted, even with the pigs using those fields. There are areas that don't cope quite as well because of the amount of pig traffic or the density and the soil types. So again, there's learnings around the soil types, there's learnings around density, but certainly to be able to facilitate a crop either permanently on the ground with the pigs or in rotation with the pigs, and how best to get value out of that. There's definitely some insights there that we need to build on.
Varieties or types of pig, different types of pig, does that make any difference, or are there trials on that?
Not really. I think there are a lot of evidence gaps, and even thinking, you know, taking pigs out of the equation and just thinking more broadly about regenerative agricultural practices, there's generally not that much scientific evidence out there about the consequences of different types of practice. So, you know, the question also asked about evidence gaps. I think there are huge gaps at the moment, and we're seeing a lot of sort of local innovation and peer-to-peer sharing of knowledge. But I think in terms of the science getting behind and understanding and quantifying the benefits of these different systems, it's lacking at this point in time.
Great. Okay, I think we've got time for probably just one more question. So there's a question here about, do you monitor, or is there any work around monitoring and calculating carbon emissions associated with outdoor pig production, for example, what's released from the soil?
Again, like Lisa said, we are embarking on a piece of research. We are going to put up, well, we're in the process of putting up a decovariance flux tower that will monitor CO2 exchange between the atmosphere and the soil on one of the sites at the University of Leeds. So that is about to happen.
Brilliant. Great. Well, yes, very many thanks to both speakers and to Pippa for answering the questions. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I'm just going to briefly put an advert up for our next webinars. So in a couple of weeks, there's Dr. Claire Scannell and Dr. Lizzie Kendon from the Met Office will be talking about urban climate change and climate services. So they're looking at the UK CP18 projections, and particularly the update from 2019 that looks at the 2.2 kilometre scale data set and what that means for urban climate change, and looking at some of the services she's been prototyping with city councils. And then in January, we'll be hearing about the socioeconomic scenarios that I mentioned earlier. So we'll hear from John Stenning at Cambridge Econometrics. So that's early January. And if you're interested in these, please register on our website. So the recording from the slides from today will be sent to all participants, and a link will be made available on our website in the next few days. So it just remains for me to say a very warm thanks again on behalf of the Champion team here at Leeds, to Lisa, also at Leeds, and Pippa, and to Steve for all your insights, and to everybody for attending. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.